so I've talked repeatedly over and over and over again about what happened to the media starting with the Reagan administration, because we used to have a thing. There was a three-prong attack by the Republicans to basically go out there and take over the media of this country. Because even back in the 80s, they knew that they were starting to fall out of favor. And with what their agenda is, unless they started brainwashing a good portion of the United States, they would be voted out of office fairly quickly. And they put forward a fairly ambitious plan and almost, well, to a point, pulled it off. And it was a three-pronged attack against neutral, legitimate media. The first was getting rid of the fairness doctrine. And for a lot of people out there, you might not know what the fairness doctrine is. The fairness doctrine was a rule that basically said if your media outlet had one point of view, you had to present the opposing point of view to make sure there was equity represented. And it was fantastic. And the reason why media was so, I feel, was such in a better place back then is you would have the liberal sports guy followed by the far-right conservative gardener. And you'd have these really great kind of eclectic lineups of radio. Well, under the Reagan administration, the argument they said is, well, people should be able to get what they want. Well, people were able to get what they wanted. And they used that false straw man argument as a way to get rid of the fairness doctrine. And immediately you got rid of quality in media, and it became far more about ideology. And that was a big problem. You still had, though, rules in place that prevented the full-scale invasion of right-wing talking points into the American mindset. And that was basically the ownership rules. Now, I'll be the first to say the Telecommunications Act of 1996 was signed by Bill Clinton. He should have never signed it, because part of that was easing up of the ownership rules and allowed for a handful of people to dictate what a vast majority of America heard on any given day. And you had, so you basically could put out right-wing radio. You basically had ownership rules that basically allowed, were inclusive and diverse, and they got rid of those. And so basically you had four different people owning the vast majority of media in any given market in the country, and then owning massive amounts of small town radio stations. So basically the same thing that you heard in Plano, Texas was the same exact thing that you heard in Aberdeen, South Dakota. It was just a consistent barrage of far-right talking points. The last point of this attempt was the attack on public radio, because even with their ownership rules and getting rid of the fairness doctrine and this far-right agenda that went out there, where the local newspaper, the local TV station, the local radio stations all were right-wing, there was always one other un-right-wing news that was available, and that was public radio. And public radio in many markets, and even it was on the classical station, the 2 minutes of or 3 minutes of news at the top of the hour were non-Republican filtered news. And they didn't want that out there. They didn't want anyone hearing anything but their agenda. And they even got the bonus of cable television and the expansion of cable television. And so the right-wing news outlets were, you went to a lot of communities, they had Fox News, and they might have CNN, but they never had MSNBC. They'd always have and Fox News was right there next to the broadcast channels, and the other networks are way down at the other end of the dial. That was kind of one of the things they did. I mean, there was really this attempt to basically make sure the only media that you got was right-wing media. And when it came to public television, public radio, they ended up failing, but they got close. But there became another problem, the internet. And particularly social media pages. And this has been a problem for them that they have had to try to navigate, because while they have a whole bunch of radio stations, which primarily appeal to an older demographic, and newspapers who primarily deal to a much older demographic, and television, which is, kind of still has a more vibrant demographic, what you ended up having was as well their messages getting knocked down because people could go up online and get the news that they wanted. And that was it. It completely undermined their entire thing. And they'd spent billions of dollars buying up radio and making sure, and buying up newspapers and buying up TV stations and making sure only certain news stories were covered. They'd spent billions on this, and all of a sudden it was getting undone. There was a time when Trump took office that they were going to think about installing a cable television type of internet where everyone got a base internet system like cable, which of course would have come with Fox News and probably OAN and Newsmax. But if you wanted CNN, well, that was the next step up. You had to pay the extra for CNN. You had to pay a lot extra, the premium package to get MSNBC or any of the left-leaning stuff, if they would even carry it. But the idea of that was so unappetizing for most people that it fell down. They finally figured out how to deceive people and use social media, unfiltered and unfettered social media, to sway a large part of the population to vote against their own best interests, a la 2015, 2016. And I remember still coming onto this show back then and saying, is anyone else noticing all these accounts that say they're Republican or Democrats and they don't seem to be putting any Democratic points of view forward? I think there's a lot of people out here trying to deceive us. And yes, I was right about that. Yay, go team, go. Boo, we ended up with Trump. But after January 6th, most of the media outlets out there put in basically rules that prevented psychopaths from taking over the public psyche. Well, that was until Elon Musk decided to go buy Twitter and, lose a whole bunch of money and turn it into basically a cesspool. Well, until Taylor Swift threatened to sue him into oblivion, and all of a sudden he found his morality again real fast, didn't he? He was that was extraordinary how quickly when Taylor Swift decided to send her lawyers after him, how quickly he basically, put out standards again. Once again, Republicans created this great idea of taking over the media so they could drive their narrative, because they knew they were starting to fall out of power and they needed to basically be able to convince a lot of people to vote against their own best interests. Mission accomplished. They took over most of the radio stations, most of the TV stations, most of the newspapers. But then comes the internet, and they've had a kind of a mixed bag when it comes to the internet. And they used Twitter very effectively to basically convince a lot of Democrats to stay home in 2016. But in 2020, Twitter was much better used, and social media accounts, pages overall, were much better used by the left to motivate people and get out the vote. And it is actually still today, social media pages are still a primary way to be able to get people out there to vote and organize and coordinate. There has been a lot of talk about TikTok. As a matter of fact, the U.S. House voted that China, the China-based owners have to sell off TikTok for it to be able to be legal here in the United States, or else it can't be used here in the United States. And now, first of all, everyone out there who's like, well, TikTok is spying on us, I got news for you. You're carrying a phone with you. You're getting spied on by a lot of people. You're getting spied on by your companies, banks. For goodness sakes, I'll click on an ad for, say, a T-shirt that features a Twinkie on it. And not only will I see that T-shirt with Twinkie pop up in 500 different other places, but I'll see T-shirts and Twinkies and all this other stuff advertised to me too. They're tracking me. They know exactly who I am. I love the Twinkies. Anyway, needless to say, that aside, I talked to Charlie today. I had to go pick him up to take him to a dentist appointment. He's over at the University of Minnesota getting ready to graduate. I got to chat with him, and I got to talk to him a little bit about this. And I said, where does TikTok rank on your Generation Z level of importance because he's kind of the front end of Generation Z. He was basically born the first year of Generation Z. He says TikTok's our number one social media site. Absolutely. TikTok is, and it's interesting to hear him talk about how YouTube is kind of longer format and we don't really do that. And Snapchat, that's mainly for 14-year-old kids who want to bully each other. So you don't want to do that. And, Twitter is, and his words, Twitter's a cesspool and Facebook is kind of more for, families and stuff like that. That's not where we really go. And it's TikTok. And so he put this out there. So, it's kind of one of those things where there's always this element behind the back of my mind saying, okay, is it really because the Chinese who are already spying on us 1,000 ways from Sunday, is this about them or is it about something else? Is this about the fact that TikTok is used very effectively to get messages out, to motivate people to go vote, to kind of organize, voter campaigns and stuff like this? What is this about? Well, then this story pops up in my timeline today. Former Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin, haven't had to say that name in a while, says he's going to put together an investor group to buy TikTok a day after the House of Representatives passed a bill that would ban the popular video app in the U.S. if its China-based owner doesn't sell its stake. Speaking on CNBC's Squawk Box, Mnuchin said Tuesday that he believes TikTok should be sold. This should be owned by a U.S. business. There is no way the Chinese would ever let a U.S. company own something like this in China, Mnuchin said on the program. Not a bad Mnuchin impression, by the way. Thank you very much. The House bill passed by a vote of 352 to 65, which means a lot of Democrats did indeed vote to get rid of this as well. Now heads to the Senate where prospects are unclear. Some senators don't believe it will pass. TikTok, which has more than 170 million users, is a wholly owned subsidy of Chinese technology firm ByteDance, BYTEDANC Limited. All right. First of all, I'm presuming, I'm going to be blunt. I do think that the Congress is seeing something that the public is not seeing in regards to TikTok, because there is a lot of people that are a little concerned about this. But the fact that Mnuchin is leading a Republican-led investment group to buy this, that immediately sends up red flares as is, okay, is this about Chinese spying on us? Or is this about the fact that you guys don't like how TikTok is being used to pants you in elections? Because I think it's a little bit more about the other one than the first one. The TikTok is the number one social media site for Generation Z. Instagram is in there a little bit, but a lot of people use TikTok. And it'll be interesting to see how Threads comes along. That's, of course, Instagram's, version of Twitter, which frankly is a lot better than Twitter. Sorry, Twitter is a freaking cesspool right now. Thanks, Elon Musk. You're a business genius. Seriously. How could I get rid of all this money? I've got an idea. He didn't one of his rockets crash today again, too? It's like he just... Is this Brewster's Millions? Is this one of the things he basically burns off, a few $100 billion? He gets a few $100 trillion. Is that what we're looking at here?
That's the trend when you're a right winger and a billionaire. Burn your money as quickly as possible. As we've seen with him and Trump and others.
Oh boy. Yeah, that's
burn that money.
Yeah. Really good investment, idiot. Anyway, yeah, well, I mean, you saw the Tesla truck. Come on. I mean, I could have, what is it, designed by a 3-year-old with crayons? Dear Lord. And great job in snow. I do have to ask that question, though. Is the point of this attack on TikTok really about the Chinese, or is this another attempt to quickly get this social media page in the hands of right-wing Republicans to stop Democrats from using it as a way to be able to coordinate, organize, and stuff like this? And as well, we should mention, everyone knows, as my son said, everyone knows Twitter's a cesspool. And I think the impact and the power of Twitter is decreasing on a daily basis. I mean, hey, I love weird ads like the next guy because you guys can't find any major advertisers anymore. But that place is. I'll put out a post that says, "Hey, I like the flag," and immediately am met by 80 people who are basically clearly trolls whose whole point is to basically scream down the new Minnesota State flag. I mean, I don't. It's losing its luster. How about we say it like that? Whether or not Threads comes in and becomes a much more viable, I think of all the outlying Twitter-esque type social media pages, it's doing better than Mastodon and Blue Sky right now is Threads. But, could the point be is like, well, we got Generation Z here, and Generation Z is not on our side. They are adamantly against the Republicans. Well, maybe it's time for us to, a la 2016 on Twitter, go to 2024 on TikTok and start brainwashing the Generation Zers to vote against their best interests. I would not put that against them. I would not put that against them in a million years because that's how these people operate, and that's how they look at these things. So